Yep. Yeah, I did. Yeah, or we did. Yeah.
Okay, if we can get started.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. Brush off. Yeah, they're a new team. Well, they're a new team. So.
Okay, this is the meeting of the Transportation and Safety Committee. I'm Alex Arenello, Public Works Director.
Mark Lasis, trustee.
Sandy Hammerly, trustee.
Chris Hansen, trustee.
I put on the agenda tonight the items. First, start with any items from the public that are not on the agenda. The other regular other agenda items are just a quick update of the transportation plan. I have some 2016 crash data that we can go over. We took recent counts on Coal Creek Drive that I can present a little later, and then we do have a request for a four-way stop at Mount Sulphurus and Castle Peak. So those are the regular items. So if there are other items, anybody that would like to address other items, you're welcome to do so now, and please use the podium and introduce yourselves.
Now
Yes.
Dulcie Brown, I'd like to know what's going on with Weldona Way. So do I sit down then?
You don't have to sit down if you don't want to. You can if you want.
I just want to know what's going on with that and what you guys have decided, if any decisions have been made.
No decisions have been made yet. We're still discussing it as a board. In fact, I think it's on the next board retreat.
Yes.
To be discussed.
Okay.
We had it as a tentative discussion item at the last retreat, but we just didn't have time to get to it. So we will be discussing it at the next board retreat.
Okay. And then I have something else to say, too.
Yeah, and I'll just add to what Trustee Hansen said. If and when the board gives direction on Weldona, it'll come back to the Traffic and Safety Committee hearing here, where it'll be an agenda item, so the public has an opportunity to come and speak on it, pro or con. We want it to be, it's a big item, and we want to make sure that any decision that's made with regards to Weldona is made after a thorough discussion, so that we have a full input from the community.
Okay. And I have one other thing to say. Only to thank the town of Superior. I'm the one that slipped on the 88th Street Bridge and fractured my knee plateau. And within, I think it was 2 weeks, the town of Superior was out there putting the rubber mats on the contraction expansion plates. So you took care of the problem pretty fast, I thought. So I don't know if you know anything about that or not, but I called the town up and I complained about it. And you guys did it in a very timely manner.
That's good. How's your knee?
A $1,000 brace here.
And for both sides as well. We do Louisville side as well.
Hello. So I'm Laura Skwazinski. I had emailed in a proposal yesterday from several members of our community, and we were interested in talking about the parking in the south side of Rock Creek, specifically the fact that the streets are very narrow and it makes it difficult for snowplows and street sweepers to get through. It also makes it tricky when it's a two-way street for cars to pass each other, and so we wanted to bring that to your attention. I realize we just sent that to you yesterday, so it may be probably on the next agenda to be discussed.
Yes, well, thank you. It isn't an agenda item. It's certainly helpful, and I applaud you for your efforts to gather the community and come up with a proposal. There's a lot of. I was looking through the proposal last night. It raises a lot of questions as to what the appropriate fix is, and kind of similar to Weldona, I think this, again, will be an issue that we'll need to talk about with the board. It'll come back to the TSC to address. But certainly, I think Castle Peak is top of our mind, and your efforts to keep us informed and give suggestions about it is really helpful. I personally think that Castle Peak needs something to happen. I'm not exactly sure what that is. Mm-hmm. And same thing with Weldona. I don't want us to make a rash decision on how to fix things, but it seems like it's a street that has an inordinate amount of people that are parking on the street, and that poses a problem with people parking too close to stop signs, snowplows getting through when it's snowing, so there needs to be some sort of solution to that problem, because otherwise, there's going to be a kid that gets hit when they're running between the cars, or an accident when people are parking too close to the stop signs and turning onto Mount Sopris or the other streets,
right,
or a car getting clipped by the snowplows coming through.
So one thing I also would like to bring your attention to is in the proposal, we did try to combine kind of two things that we thought were an issue. The first is the cars parking on the streets, just generally with the narrowness of Castle Peak. But the other was kind of broader for the whole community around parking during a snowstorm. There were concerns from a lot of residents about the snowplow's ability to effectively clear the roads when you have cars parked, even on some of those wider streets. So I understand you'll address that as well later, but just wanted to bring those two issues to you separately.
Quick question on the proposals you had. I had a chance to review them briefly, not thoroughly, but it appeared that you were making recommendations townwide, and I think you just said that as well. So is that the recommendation that you guys were putting forth, was townwide to implement those?
So that's a tough question. I think most of us were on the south side of the neighborhood, so we could only really speak to the congestion on Castle Peak. We
Mm-hmm.
do think that the alternate parking would solve the snowplow issue throughout the community, but it does solve the issue as well of that two-way traffic on the narrower streets like Castle Peak and Garrow.
Yeah, it made me think of my street. I know your streets fairly well, but I haven't been up there to see when there's snow plows out and street sweepers and all that. Our street is not a wide street, but the snow plows do a pretty good job of making one pass down. And I don't think any of the neighbors in our area have an issue with it, but that doesn't mean that it's not a major issue in your area. So I just wanted to clarify.
Sure.
Because when we have that discussion, if you're thinking town-wide, it might be something a little more difficult to put through.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is just really isolated to your neighborhood, I think it's something we should definitely look at.
I think we can certainly reach out and understand which other streets are affected. This was really something that was raised via that town Facebook group, so certain people spoke up. I wasn't sure exactly which streets were represented there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jim Payne, Superior resident and president of the Rock Creek HOA, and I just wanted to mention on this subject of parking and traffic in those areas that it's something that we in the HOA hear a lot about from our members, and I've spoken to some of you individually and to the town manager's office about this. We're doing a lot to look at the growth of businesses, home-based businesses within Rock Creek, which are really not allowed with the exception of some exceptions that we can make. But they're very inevitably closely tied to traffic issues, and the complaints about them are closely tied to traffic and parking issues. So I've offered to Manager Magley that we would like to keep in the dialogue on that, because some of the things that we do and can do from the HOA's perspective can impact the solution. And so we like to work cooperatively with the town to make the best of that. So just wanted to inform the committee.
Jim, does the HOA have any requirements that cars have to be parked in driveways or garages? Or is that?
Well, not specifically for all residences, but where this comes into play is when we have an issue with a rental or when we have an issue with a business. So and specifically on businesses, which we do have lots of authority over, whether to approve them or not, we can make that part of the condition. Since that's usually the main thrust of the neighborhood complaints, that's something that we can impose by putting down restrictions, requiring them to use the garage first and only have so many vehicles that are not in the garage. That is if we approve it. But so we can impact it. But the message is that there's a growing number of businesses sprouting up that are not approved, and we're addressing those and getting applications at the same time every week. And these are Airbnb now and childcare and all kinds of things like that that can impact parking and traffic. So it's a big issue. There are also, I don't need to tell you all, but there are also many more rentals, and we can't restrict rentals unless they're short-term rentals, but they do lead to many of the parking and traffic issues that we're talking about. And I've heard an interesting stories relayed about Castle Peak just recently. Someone who has 3 of these situations right within the same block. One of them, my guess is not legal. One of them probably is, but may need some restriction or some talking to, and the other one, it really wasn't clear. But so it would be, that's the kind of thing that we can resolve best for everybody if we work closely with the town, and we'd like to do that.
Jim, quickly, you mentioned rentals a few times. How does a rental change the parking issue if it's a family of 4, just like the neighbors that own are a family
well,
of 4?
If it's a family, a typical family, average family size renting a house, then there's not an issue. But where you have a problem, there are two problems. One is college kids or that sort of thing, and there are 2 or 3 of those right now that are flaring up, and I'm sure there are many more that we don't know about. The other is which is what concerns us more than anything, is where somebody comes in, rents a house, and we don't have any restrictions on rental unless it's a short-term Airbnb type rental. But someone comes in and rents the house or buys a house with the assumption of running a business out of it, where the revenue from the business is part of the financing or part of their financial assumption for taking on the investment in the home or the rental of the home. And that's where you really have a problem, because then they've made a commitment, purchased a home, rented the home, signed a lease on the assumption, which is wrong, that they can operate a business out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where it becomes an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Just, I wanted to add to what we were hearing about the Castle Peak. One additional consideration, and this is to your point, Chris, about kind of similar sized streets. One of the issues that I'm seeing with Castle Peak is the speed that people are traveling on it. People are using it as a way to get to El Dorado K through 8, and I think that's one of the problems with Castle Peak, and it just makes it a unique situation. So you've got a higher number of rentals, more densely parked streets on both sides of the street, people parking up to the stop sign when they shouldn't be, coupled with speeds that shouldn't be traveled. It just seems like it's something that deserves the board's attention, and I think we should probably bring it up at the next retreat and get it.
Do we know if the parking on the streets is long-term, or is it just overnight parking and they're going to work in the morning and coming
I think it's both from what I hear, and yeah. So there's a problem with people that are leaving cars, inoperable cars that are just sitting there. There's people that are just leaving cars that are staying there for an inordinate amount of time, which is why Laura's presentation suggested there was the possibility for alternate street, where you'd force people to move their cars periodically just to show that they are moving, and make an exception for the weekends.
Well, we do have ordinances in place to take care of that, and it's a matter of, I guess, sending Reggie up there on a regular basis to make sure that cars are being moved and not stored there if they're not operating.
The problem is, how do you police that, right? How do you know that this car hasn't been moved?
Well, Reggie does that on a regular basis. How many days a week is Reggie? 3 days a week. So I would suggest, and I'm not saying that's the solution, but definitely send him up there. And we talked to the town manager about it, but send him up there to look and go back several times and see if the cars happen to be there.
The response that we've gotten is that if the cars have...
Would you mind coming up to the mic, please?
The response that we've gotten on that, because I've had cars parked right in front of my house for months at a time, is that if the cars have current tags, there's nothing that can be done. It's only if the registration has expired and it is an abandoned car.
Okay.
Right, so we don't have an ordinance on the book that says you need to move your car every 7 days, every 3 days, or something like that if it's parked on the street. If it has current tags, it can stay there until those tags expire, right?
Okay. And then the speed issue, I guess that's something that we definitely can police, yeah? What's the speed limit on Castle Peak?
25.
Okay. So,
The problem, so the problem with Castle Peak is, again, with all the cars parked there, it's tough for my officers to find a place to park, to run radar. To be honest with you, when we're driving up and down the street, people see us and they automatically slow down. So I'm sure the speed's happening, but we can't catch it because we stick out like sore thumbs. And people see us, so they're going to slow down when they see our cars.
yeah. Do we have any way, Alex, of putting in one of those temporary, the sign that shows you what speed you're going with the posted speed?
We just got the one we had, so we can now start putting that out on various streets.
Because I know that's been a temporary fix in some areas, and again, that's not the end-all solution, but maybe that's an opportunity to put out there to get people to think twice about going over 25 miles an hour. Oh, okay.
Hi, I'm Sue Ewing, and I'd like to address the same topic. And just from a little bit of a different perspective, I worked with these ladies, and they all live in the Castle Peak area. I live off of Torrey's Peak, and it's a similar issue, and I'm actually the one who raised the issue on the Facebook page after we had a pretty significant snow event. And there are cars that are parked on Torrey's Peak days on end. And I happen to know that those people live in houses with 3-car garages and 3-car driveways, and it just baffles me as to why they continue to park their car in the street. But more importantly, I can't really control that, but I have lived in communities where the HOA had a very strong policy that said garage first, then driveway, then street, but no overnight street parking, and it was enforced. And it was great. The neighborhood looked great almost all the time when you drove through it. The streets were wide enough. You could drive down them. Emergency vehicles had access. We didn't have snow issues, but here we do. So to me, it's even more important here. I've also lived in Wisconsin where you had alternate street parking. So on the odd day of the month or of the week, you parked on the odd side of the street, and on the even day, you parked on the even side. And that meant that the snow plow could go down one side one night in the middle, and then the next day when all the other cars were moved, the snow plow could go down the other side. So you kept your streets clear and you kept your streets safe pretty much all the time. So I guess there's precedent in other communities. So it seems like something we could probably tackle.
Okay.
Okay.
I know
Thanks.
Denver also has periodically you got to move your car to accommodate street sweepers, so no parking on this side of the street on Tuesdays and something like that. So I guess the question is it congestion that we're really trying to address, and just we've got too many cars on the street that we can't even have the officers patrolling it because it's so densely parked? or is it periodically we want people to move their cars? And those are two different questions in my mind, and require two different solutions. And I'm not exactly sure what the solutions are, but it seems like we want to discourage, at least from my perspective, such a densely parked street. That seems like what would lead to the solution that we're all looking for. So I think we need to bring that up with the board at the retreat. So thank you.
Susan Bauer, Saddlebrook, resident. And Trustee Lax, in comment to your question, what is the root cause? I don't know, but I think people have a passion for their cars. I know in the Lakeview neighborhood, a lot of people, their garages are storage lockers, and I see their cars in their driveways, and I see additional cars out on the street. So I don't know, maybe a survey about how many cars each household has might be of interest, because most everybody has at least one car, and if they have a passion, they might have a collector car as well, or multiple. I don't know, but something to think about. Handful of issues that I wanted to just raise tonight. The speed light, or I don't know if it's a solar light that tells you what your speed is coming south on 88th, has been out for some time, or did it get dismantled?
We have a couple of speed radar signs out that they're finished up and repaired.
Oh.
Can't get repaired. Will be replaced.
Okay, excellent. On 88th, I believe the board and the town is aware, and certainly this officer, that 88th is a nice thoroughfare, and I know that Officer Sharon has clocked drivers at 70 miles an hour on 88th. I would be an advocate of a couple speed bumps to take out a few catalytic converters. It's only going to take once before they slow down. It's my understanding that from the December Traffic and Safety Committee meeting that the town is not interested in widening the bridge, the 88th bridge. Is that correct?
Well, I think we'd be interested in it, but I think it's cost prohibitive at the moment.
Okay.
And one of the problems also is that on Louisville's side, it's just 2 lanes. So if we widen the bridge without working with Louisville, that would be a problem. So it would need to be something that would be done with Louisville to actually come up with a solution.
Yeah, I don't think that, we wouldn't widen the bridge unless we had Louisville on board with us, but
Right.
we would like to widen 88th Street up to the bridge, but it doesn't make sense to do that because it goes to the bridge. And unless we can widen the bridge, I think there's space on the other side, but it just would be cost prohibitive at this moment.
Sure.
One other thing that we're doing, we're negotiating an IGA with Louisville to look at extending Campus Drive over US 36 as a possible alternative to 88th, or maybe relieving some of 88th. How far that goes and whether we can pay for it or not, but that's another option we're be exploring.
Okay, excellent. Some of my questions behind them, I'm aware that the December meeting was, we reviewed some concept plans in anticipation of the Zaharias and Anderson property being developed. And, you know, it was very informative, that meeting, to learn that 88th is at capacity at 10,000 cars a day. And I've been mulling on that if the Zaharias, not taking into account Anderson, but if the Zaharias property was developed, which would be an additional 276 units with 2-car garage, figure at least 6 one-way trip cars, one-way trips on 88th a day, 2 adults going out to employment and maybe running 1 errand. That would be roughly almost 1,600 additional cars a day on 88th than what we have right now, not including any service vehicles or, and over time, when people work from home, they, as Jim pointed out, you end up having more service vehicles. So I can easily see 88th being additionally impacted by any proposed development of the Zaharias property. And I wanted to point out, I don't know if there's any truth to this, but I wonder if a lot of our speeding is coming from what was formerly the Horizons or might be rental units. It would be hard to know unless you plot out on a map everybody's addresses. But it makes me wonder, what is the demographics of the person that is speeding up Rock Creek or on 88th? And are they renters? And I don't mean to target renters because they're a resident, but if I extrapolate, I think Horizon has 1,000 units. Saddlebrook, which was formerly an apartment complex that was converted to rentals, has 324 units. And if Zaharias, and we've struggled with having over a 50% owner occupancy in Saddlebrook in the 15 years that I've lived here. And if you brought in Zaharias, we would have over 1,600 rentals on the east side of town. That seems daunting to me. That was all I really wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelly McCarley. I live in Saddlebrook, too. I'm just worried about the new town, all those units coming in, and I heard there might be a road to 88th, connecting 88th to Newtown, and I'm just bringing that concern up. And if, you know, the Anderson property's built on, and Saharis, and there's a connecting road to the new town, which is over 1,400 units, we're way over capacity. So just, especially that's the hospital and the high school, and it's also an elementary school there. And I don't know where all those kids are going to be going to school, so that's also going to up all the traffic on 88th. And that's just one of my concerns, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I also have a letter from Waldona to say that.
Okay.
There's not any other items?
Alex, if I could just bring up one additional thing I heard from a number of residents at this past First Fridays. So apparently by El Dorado K through 8, number one, we don't have a crossing guard that's working there, and number two, apparently there are people that are just parking right up to the stop signs and past the stop signs up to the curb. So I think this is, I mean, at some point in time, there's going to be a kid that's going to get hit by a car. We don't have a crossing guard there. We need to do a better job to enforce that there is, you know, maybe it's just putting up a sign that says, you know, El Dorado K through 8. So up by Torrey's Peak in Indiana, I think is the main problem. And Mount Sopris and in Indiana as well.
Because we did that at Torrey's Peak in Indiana. We painted the buffer zone from the stop signs back.
Okay, so I think we need to do the same thing at Mount Sopris, because just kids are walking there. We don't have a crossing guard, and I don't think there's a sign that says no parking here to curb, even though that's under the ordinance. We should discourage people from leaving their cars there. Okay. Yes.
School guards and schools made me think of something. I don't know if you're aware of, but a lot of students, children, elementary school children, are crossing 88th, and they're not crossing them at the crosswalk to pick up the bus over by the, on Shamrock there by the Lakeview neighborhood. So they're crossing in an unprotected area of, yeah. There's to the north and there's to the roundabout to the south. They're not doing that. They're coming across 88th where there's no crosswalk.
There's that flashing crosswalk.
I know, but they're not using that. Yeah. So.
Forward on the next item is the transportation plan review. I'm not going to go through this, but I just provided a presentation that I made at the Planning Commission South Cold Creek Drive and connecting that from Rock Creek to the Anderson property to the town center. And what's in yellow is what was written up in the plan, during the plan about the connection and what to do about Cold Creek Drive in terms of traffic calming because it's so wide, provide a connection with that extension to do some put a median in or some other traffic calming features on existing Cold Creek Drive from Rock Creek Parkway up to Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
That was written, and then I also provided minutes from the meeting from August of 2013 when the board was discussing the town center and whether to connect the town center to Cold Creek Drive and King Gate. There's some discussion
Yeah.
points that were made as a result of these discussions. This will be brought up in the transportation plan. So the board had several discussions about making that connection. I think that's background to the discussion on the case of
Yeah.
the Anderson property that's coming in. And why is that pushing that connection? So you have that.
Yep. I recall, Alex, that in the early days of planning the town center, the discussion about the need, the absolute need and the desire to have Cold Creek connect. But I recognize now also there's some residents that don't want to see that happen, but there's got to be a middle of the road, so to speak, that we can come to on that, because I do think it's an important connection. But can you go back to the 88th Street? As a board, we've talked about this more recently, especially when we saw the plans for Zaharias, and just to address the concerns about the Zaharias development, that actually we haven't heard anything more on that since the last presentation. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have them come back. They certainly could, but I think they were fairly discouraged because we really didn't appreciate the plan that they presented. But it's in the traffic plan, Alex, to widen that. There's utility lines there. What's the possibility of making that happen, where we actually bury the lines and increase the width of that road, at least up to the bridge, to make, like, I don't know if you call it a slip lane, but I know we're going to address Weldona and all that at a future date, but if we didn't address Weldona and cars coming out of there, it's really tough for them to get out. We talked about a traffic circle there, which I think is a good idea, but at least having some kind of a slip lane where they can come out and stage until cars go by. But just generally making that wider, what's the possibility of that, and have we done a study to see the cost on that?
Certainly, Zaharias comes in, we talked to them about burying the utility line and making those improvements on their side. We've also talked that the town would participate in rebuilding the entire roadway. The roadway is falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
We would like to, at some point, reconstruct it. We can hold on because we don't want to do it. Zaharias comes in. So
What happens if Zaharias doesn't? We don't allow someone to build there.
we can come in and from underground, and we have an underground in front. We can use some of that to actually carry the power. In terms of making those improvements, as areas is definitely on hold, the board may want to look at just going ahead and making those improvements over the CIP project.
Have we looked into what that would cost to do for,
Yes, I
not the
have.
burying the lines, but making the road wider? Because
I have those costs, we've done estimates on that. I can bring that back during the budget process. But it would be nice to have, a sidewalk on that side to put the turn lanes and Shamrock
Mhm.
and that road up to make it much safer than this.
Yeah, it's part of the plan. It's been in the plan for a while too, so it'd be nice to see us maybe start thinking about that a little more serious. Of course, right. Yeah. Okay.
So I have a couple questions just about the plan in general. I don't know, did you want to finish and then we can get to it? So I'm concerned about just the assumptions that are inherent in the plan. And, when we're defining certain roads as minor collectors or major collectors, what does that mean? And what is that going to do to the neighborhoods. And then secondarily, there is repeated reference throughout this transportation plan about the notion of making neighborhood connections, right? And I guess my question first on that issue is, what is a neighborhood? And if it's not a defined term, so if you're just looking at Rock Creek, I think there are many neighborhoods within Rock Creek. It's a master plan subdivision with many subdivisions within it. And connecting those neighborhoods is one thing. Connecting Rock Creek to Superior Town Center is a different discussion altogether. And I think we need to be careful about the effect that we are going to have on existing neighborhoods by making connections because we want to foster neighborhood connectivity. And that goes, to the designation of South Coal Creek Drive being a major collector in the map on page 21. Same thing with Coal Creek Drive in Original Town being designated as a major collector. I don't want to have an unintended consequence of these roads being designated as a major collector, and then all of a sudden the surrounding neighborhood is damaged detrimentally because we're making these connections and designating things in a certain way. So I want us to be careful about, I think first and foremost, before we make any connections, we need to think about preserving the quality of life for the residents who live here. And our first mission should be to do no harm. And I don't want to make a connection just to make a connection if it's going to increase traffic, if it's going to detract from the quality of life. So I had a couple questions just on how we're designating things, and I don't know to what extent we want to fly spec this document at this point in time, or is this document going to the board for the board's consideration?
All this was doing was, the planning commission wanted a review of the plan and kind of progress update. So I just said, here's the plan, here's what we've done.
Mm-hmm.
Normally the comp plan and transportation review every 5 years, so we have this 2014. So 2019 or maybe next year, we still take it forward.
Okay.
So there's nothing really scheduled to do anything with the plan.
Okay, because there's just, I think, policy statements made in this document that I don't know are accurate. And I think that when this comes before the board, we need to think about it.
And certainly they should be revisited. Some of those policy statements go back to 2000.
Right, like for example, there's there's discussions about Northwest Corridor and Jefferson Parkway and things like that. And I think that the town board as a board has certain policy positions that they want to take on whether or not that should get extended at all, let alone just anticipating its eventual development. And similarly with Coal Creek Drive and Original Town and the Coal Creek Drive, South Coal Creek through Rock Creek, I want us to be careful about what we're saying in this document when we amend it and revisit it in a year or so. Because I can't fault the developer if they're coming and looking at this document
Right.
to rely on it.
Well, this document was, the previous board went through this entire document and drafted this and approved it. So I'm not sure why we would think the board is not confident in what we have here.
Well, I think times change, circumstances change. We've got a different board.
Well, certainly the designation of this part of Coal Creek Drive as a major collector was done. Not great engineers. It was built out, it was designed, and the width was for a major collector. What we're saying, this plan is, we don't no longer need that designation as a major collector. Let's put traffic on, let's put
Right.
narrow the width if we connect, we don't need it. We're not gonna have the traffic light, we only need 4 lanes on that portion. Certainly we can change the designation.
Jim Payne. Alex, is your mic on? Thanks. When this plan was created, I guess I'm trying to remember, because there was a lot of discussion about exactly what this document is. And I thought it was not considered a policy document. It was more of a vision at the time. Is this considered a policy document in the equivalent basis?
It's
to the
considered
comp
part of the
plan?
comprehensive plan. It's considered an element of the comprehensive plan.
Okay, so it's officially adopted as part of the comprehensive plan.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Can I make a comment?
What's your name?
Rita Dozell, resident. Mr. Chris, no, trustee.
If you can keep your comments to 30 seconds or less.
30 seconds. This is a vision document. It's not a policy document. It says what was happening at the time when the Planning Commission created it. It was approved as a document, a work product of the Planning Commission, but nothing in here has been approved. I mean, just because it says something in here, it still has to be actually entered into through an FTP or some kind of a planning document. This is not a planning document like a developer would create. This is our vision for how we think transportation may be happening over the next few years. But it's not a done deal by any means. And the Planning Commission is the one that's responsible for this.
And I guess my point for just raising these questions is and this is one of my personal faults, is I question everything. I'm a lawyer. And so I just want to make sure that if there's an assumption inherent in here, it's a deliberate assumption. And if not, if it's not deliberate, let's make sure that it's smart and it's careful and that it makes sense going forward. And we should feel confident that we can question everything so we get the best town that we can have.
And counselor and trustee, an assumption is not a decision. So you're right.
Okay, if we can leave that, move on to, let's see. Okay, Transportation and Safety Committee. Well, here's a report on safety. And the Sheriff Department does a great job in filing accident reports, collecting accident data, and providing those to us. And we kind of collate that and try to make sense out of the data. We try to monitor where accidents are occurring and try to address any safety issues that are arising. So we've been, at least since 2011, I've been collecting this data. So the first graph here shows the accidents that have occurred. The red bars show the accidents on public streets, and the blue show the accidents on private parking lots and Horizons and Safeway, all the other private ends. So you can see about a third of the accidents, at least last year, were on private property. You can see a decrease last year. Great job for sheriff office or whatever you were doing. But for some reason we did go down after a trend of an upward trend. We did drop last year. This is what I'm always interested in are the injuries, and we've been tracking those since 2013. We have 13 to 16, 13 last year injury accidents. And our accident levels are much less than, I think, surrounding communities. I mean, we have more or less a modern, not a modern one, but we've been built in the last 20 years, so we've taken into account all the latest traffic engineering principles and so forth. So I think this is what the type of data you need to look at to see where accidents are occurring, what we can do about them. These are where they're occurring. Most of them are occurring at intersections. The ones on public streets, like last year, 57 occurred at intersections, and 23 occurred at non-intersections. So, for example, Castle Peak and others, and I'll show you some figures about where they're occurring. So let's go to.
And do these numbers include Diverging Diamond?
Yes, and they also include State Highway 128, which is kind of on the periphery.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see this, but here are the locations of all the accidents. So you can see the yellow, the larger the yellow circle is, the more accidents. But we do track where they are, so we'll take a look at, is that Castle, no, Castle Peak Sears. So we didn't have any accidents. We did have one accident on Castle Peak to the south of Mount Sopris. None on Mount Sopris. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So those are where they're occurring. They're kind of randomly on street segments. They're kind of randomly occurring, hitting parked vehicles or someone backing out of the driveway, things of that nature. But by and large, most of the accidents on public streets are occurring at intersections. That's last year. I also have for the last 5 years. So these are accident locations for the last 6 years, actually. And you can see because we're occurring at the Diverging Diamond intersection and at the Marshall McCaslin. I also have, I have this one.
Have we had any accidents at the construction site for the roundabout?
Yes, and they don't show up. I don't know, some of them may have showed up. We do have some that have occurred this year at the ones, especially in the snowy conditions. We had a few there.
Okay.
This ranks the intersection by 5-year total. So you can see, let's see if I can increase that.
Can you enlarge that?
Yeah. So at the interchange, US 36 and McCaslin interchange, that was the two combined intersections were 89, and you can see that's trended down. We had 13 versus 22 in 2014. Most encouraging is at Marshall McCaslin. We only had 5 in 2016.
Why is that, Alex? Because that's away from the Diverging Diamond. I mean, that's a big decrease.
Well, first of all, we added a third triple left. And then last year we coordinated things with the Diverging Diamond. Before we had the Diverging Diamond, we had traffic backing up into Marshall McCaslin and creating some issues. We also added the double left turn lane, and we went to protected only single instead of permitted for the left turns, north and south left turns. So we've made a number of improvements there.
Okay. That's great.
That's encouraging that's happening. And then you can see others. Most of our high accident locations are at traffic signals, roundabouts, and then we do, for example, down at Shamrock, there's 7 at Shamrock and 88th, at Waldona, 7 at Waldonia and 88th. So those don't have turn lanes, for example, so it's an easy fix to help out at those two intersections. Of course, involves some widening of the road. So this is for the committee's benefit. We're tracking these, and this is the type of data you want to look at to make sure you're addressing specific locations, making sure if there's accident, and you really need to have a 5 or 6 year history to really find out where the high volume accidents.
Alex, what I'm most impressed about is the bottom number, though. It's almost cut in half from last year, the total number of accidents in the town.
Yeah. At intersections here. At
Yeah,
intersections.
That's impressive.
Yeah, for some reason, and Jim thinks it might have been Diverging Diamond and Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll keep tracking those, and sometimes they'll go up or down.
Sure.
And Alex, I just want to say, you've done a great job with the Diverging Diamond, and you were great on 9 News and in the Denver Post. And
Well, thank you.
I think that it's taken people a little time to get used to it, but obviously it's working.
Mhm.
And now a lot of other communities are taking a look at Superior to see what we're doing here, and it's
Nice to see
it's
what
great.
we.
I do think that one area for improvement on the Diamond. I think personally, when you're going towards Louisville, and if you're in the left-hand lane, so you want to get onto 36 West, going towards Boulder, when people are coming east on 36 and then merging onto the Diverging Diamond, you always have to double check to make sure because they're not going to yield. And they just come pulling onto the diverging Diamond Bridge at like 40 miles an hour. And if you've got the right of way, that's a dangerous aspect. I think the yield sign is almost too far back. You know, it's like you're.
So that's was troublesome, when we had the design of how that was going to work. And I think that's one of the areas we're going to monitor to see what kind of accidents we get. We could easily put a traffic signal there, but it would make things a lot less efficient.
Right.
We could just put a traffic light right there.
I mean, maybe some flashers or
Flashing
something.
lights. Yeah.
Something to get people's attention, knowing that there's a car coming at 45 miles an hour, with the right of way,
Right.
and then they're coming at 45 miles an hour, and it's that to me seems the most dangerous part of
Okay.
that interchange.
It's actually both sides. If you're coming from Denver and getting off, you have a tendency to want to just go right onto the diverging Diamond, and so it's both sides that need that. I agree.
The other issue we've had is the visibility. If you're right at the stop bar, whether you can see the overhead lights. So we may put some lights on the side poles to increase that. So we'll collecting data like this will keep us monitoring that, and certainly what you described is something we may look at.
Because I think when people are traveling, from Louisville to Superior or Superior to Louisville, we're getting used to the diverging Diamond. But when people are coming off of 36, they're not necessarily used to it, right? They may not be residents in Louisville or Superior, so they're going to be pulling off of that exit, and that's the challenge, I think, with it, because they're not necessarily anticipating that there's going to be oncoming traffic coming right next to them.
Okay, good point.
Alex, did we get the backup power for the lights on the diverging Diamond installed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a UPS uninterruptible power supply
All right.
that was installed.
Just for those of you who didn't know, that we had power go out, the lights went out, and can you imagine going on the diverging Diamond with those 3 lanes with no lights? Yeah, so we have backup power now.
We had a problem right there. Did it come back on?
So why not a stop sign where you were talking, Mark? For those people to stop, look, and then procedure is that?
Question was, why not a stop sign?
Yeah. Interesting suggestion. It's either yield or a traffic light, but I think Trustee Lacey's suggestion of maybe some warning lights that you're coming up, additional signing.
I've been in the neighborhoods there, so I was.
So
The
Alex,
problem with a stop sign is that then you're going to get people rear-ending you because they're not used to it. So we don't want to cause an additional problem.
Well, the whole idea of the diverging Diamond is to keep traffic flowing.
Right.
So, but maybe the stop sign is a solution. If flashing lights at a yield sign don't work, maybe it is. But I would say try the flashing lights first and see that.
Well, the flashing lights, when you're coming to a crosswalk and there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk, those work. I mean, those get people to slow down and yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. So, I mean, I'm not a traffic expert, but I think that would probably be a smart solution potentially. It would certainly get people's attention and maybe cause them to slow down when they ordinarily wouldn't. Especially if you can make them somehow like motion sensitive to know that there's a car in the
there.
lane, and they wouldn't necessarily be flashing all the time, but flash to get somebody's attention. Then there's a car
Good idea.
in traffic.
So Alex, I just have a question on the accidents at the corner of McCaslin and High Plains. It looks like we've had accidents there since we installed the stoplight, but not before. But I didn't know if that was the case or if we just weren't tracking that intersection before. And do we know anything about the accidents that are occurring there? Was the stoplight maybe not as great an idea as we thought, or was it people coming down in a snowstorm?
They occurred after the light went in. I think we put it in 14 or 13.
Yeah, you said 2014 on the
Right.
chart. So
All
that's
right.
why I just said that was sort of unusual. You would have thought it would have made it less likely to have accidents, and now we are having accidents. So
Do you,
maybe.
All 3 of the accidents that have occurred there were all rear-end accidents. People not necessarily paying attention, but bumping into the back end of another car. And the stoplight was put in to make it safe for pedestrians to cross. not as a traffic calming device for motor vehicles, but it was to make it so the people in the ridge could safely cross the road to get to where all the trails are.
So is it mostly people coming from this end going south? Because it's sort of blind when you come around there?
Correctly, it's two were southbound accidents, and one was a northbound accident.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, where do I have the rest? Okay, Cold Creek Drive, and I think Trustee Hansen was on last year when we talked about the traffic on Cold Creek Drive, and the board directed the staff to continue to collect traffic data along Cold Creek Drive to monitor what happens once the Cold Creek crossing construction is completed, and it's still ongoing, but it's starting to trickle down. So this is data points that we've collected data over the past years. So we tried to give you a feel comparing specific locations. So we've added in January 22nd this year, we took another series of traffic counts. There was a question, is traffic higher on weekends? So we actually put the counters out to count Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you can see the relative difference between a weekday and a Saturday and a Sunday. So Sunday is a little bit less than Saturday, and Saturday is a little bit less than a weekday.
Alex, Trustee Ryan had a good question today about the counts, and you said that one of the counts was done when school was out, and then other counts were done while school was in.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it makes me wonder about the whole study here. Wouldn't we consider doing traffic counts on same day so we can compare apples to apples?
So the later counts that we've done have been usually when school's in session, and it's usually March or April. These two counts were taken for a different purpose. I think they were taken when the Rogers Farm was starting to kick off. So the consultant doing that study provided us this data, but he had done it in July. We would not normally done it, but he had done these traffic counts on his own for that specific purpose. So those counts are kind of not comparable with the other ones that are normally done during the school year. So the 954 and 968 were taken in July. Most of the other counts were either in the January, March, or April time period.
Okay.
Also, so these are daily counts. So this is if you put a hose across the street, it would count traffic in both directions. So it's a 24-hour count of traffic in both directions. We also took speed data, and we have multiple pages of speed data. One of the measures traffic engineers use is 85th percentile speed, which says that most people go at a prudent speed limit for the prevailing conditions. So you normally want to set speed limits about that level. So in this case, between this is between 3rd and 4th, the 85th percentile was 22 miles an hour in 2016. Recently was 24 miles per hour. The speed limit's 25 miles per hour. We also provide data on the number of vehicles exceeding the posted speed limit and any vehicles exceeding 30 miles an hour. So those are the speeds there. We also added in the 6th to 8th Avenue location, that's where traffic's coming down the hill. So that's where traffic would be going the fastest, coming down the hill. So we do have speeds that are a little higher in that particular location. The 85th percentile is 29 miles per hour, and then vehicles that are exceeding the speed limit, 25 miles an hour, is almost 50%. Along with that, we also collect data on, at a couple locations for trucks. And you can see, let's see, we had some bikes, we had cars and trailers, and then we have the larger vehicles, 2-axle to 6-tire, 6-axle, about 26 out of 962 for that particular location. It didn't appear like we had a whole lot of large vehicles on that particular day. So that's the type of data that we will continue to collect, and we'll do this every couple of months to try to monitor traffic patterns, traffic volumes.
Do we have any data tracking truck traffic now that the Coal Creek crossing is
That's what we're trying to track
mainly
here.
built out? I mean, has it changed at all, or is it still as
do-
heavy? Because I know that a number of residents were complaining about, construction traffic going down Coal Creek.
I didn't put percentages. So here we had in 2016, so I think this was April of, or maybe back in 2016, we have truck data, and then we have truck data here too. So I can probably put these in percentages to show you whether the percentages have changed between last year when construction was going on and what we just counted this time and what we will be counting. So
That truck data there, though, that's January 20th through 22nd. Is that correct?
yes.
Yeah, okay. But can you clarify, the 2-axle, 6-tire truck, that could be just someone's personal truck. It's just good. It's dual. It's
Pickup truck.
Yeah,
Mhm.
an F-350 or something.
Right.
Okay. And then 3-axle and 5-axle, is that like a?
Like a 5-axle would be a tractor trailer.
Okay.
And a 3-axle would be like a UPS truck, or one with 2 axles on the back and one on the front.
Does that include our snow plow contractor?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And George Kupner,
Mm-hmm.
he's got his
Yes.
truck. Okay. Okay.
Before I leave, I know there are people that want to talk about this.
May I ask questions?
Sure.
Yes, please.
So, I'm Marina Rudolph.
If you could just speak into the mic so we have you on the record, please.
I'm Marina Rudolph. I just moved into Coal Creek Crossing. I sit at 6th and Coal Creek, and I work from my home. So I get to watch traffic all day long from my office. And the traffic is so fast. So I'm not surprised to see 29 miles per hour, but I think it's much more than that, and it's both going up and down. It's like people feel the need to really gun it on the way up to make it to the top of that hill. And then when they come down, those huge trucks, they're not construction trucks. I know one of them belongs to Kufner, but they are those big trucks, 3-axle, that are carrying gravel or something, and they come down that hill like they're on fire. I mean, it is so fast. And the most concerning thing is we have a crosswalk that has the lines right to the playground. And that playground is not that far from the road. So it is horrifying to sit there in my office and just watch these children and the balls roll down the hill to the road, and these trucks have no regard that is now residential walkway to a park with a playground. Is that are these numbers concerning, or is it just because I sit there and watch it every day?
Well, if anyone's speeding down that road at 40 plus miles an hour, then yeah, of course that's a concern. Yeah.
So is there anything we can do, or like you say, we're just going to monitor it for a few more months? Is there a plan? So now, let me ask you this, I'm sorry. So now that it's residential and a playground, will this affect anything? Do we have a different plan for the speed limit? I hate to put speed bumps in because I love watching the cyclists tear down that hill.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want those huge trucks flying down that hill.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the speed is 25 miles an hour, correct?
Yes.
I don't know if you can go lower than that. I mean, I don't know if that's realistic, though, to take it
Right.
lower than that. Speed bumps, I mean, possibly a good solution, but we have to plow the roads too.
Correct. Right.
So, I don't know. I guess we'd defer to the sheriff's department and see if if it is a real problem there, do some patrol there. Yeah, yeah.
And I see you, and I call you guys pretty often.
Oh, you're the one.
I'm the one who calls you. I call you. And the timing is always just horrendous. It's just horrible. But on Sunday afternoons, for some reason, those huge gravel trucks feel the need to fly up and down that road. And I don't know I don't understand where they're coming from or what they're doing. But I'd love to know, and I'd love to get them to stop before something tragic happens.
Thank you.
Sure.
We'll continue to take this type of data, and if there are, speeding data that shows up, we'll look at it to come back with, other options to see what we can do to slow traffic down, and then we'll we'll work with the sheriff to make sure we, catch any people are going above the speed limit. The data does have the actual speeds, so we can tell you there are some outliers out there.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess I'm the one she'd be talking about. On Sundays, I do retrieve a couple of tree boxes. As far as me hauling gravel, if I'm hauling gravel on Sunday, it's because somebody don't have water or sewer. And if my truck was full coming down that hill at over 40 mile an hour, I'd never stop at 4th. They just 80,000 pounds, and in 2 blocks at 40 mile an hour, you're not stopping.
Yeah.
I'd be running every stop sign through town. So I get a kick out of people. Everybody don't like something. But for somebody to build her house, they trucked the dirt off. They had a loader. It's now that I've closed the door, I don't want nobody else to come in, and that's kind of the wrong attitude. And the other problem that I have is we've spent a lot of money on traffic studies on West Coal Creek, and I think we've spent enough money on it. I think that we need to widen that street back to 60 feet like it always has been. It's always been our primary feeder street in and out of Superior, always, from the time I can remember. So 15 years ago, we got talked into some traffic calming by somebody that's in this room. And it's did nothing but go downhill. The traffic calming would be fine if we didn't have to contend with cars parked on both sides of 22 foot of asphalt and bicycles. We have made a very dangerous situation ourselves. It's not one that growed on us. By us narrowing the road, and then the bicycles are supposed to go down Sycamore. They don't. They come down West Coal Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, we've made a bad situation ourselves. And I honestly think, that was 60 foot for as long as I could ever remember when it's dirt. We do have a very nice shopping center up here. And I think that if I go shop somewhere and I have not a problem getting in and not a problem getting out, I'll come back. But if you take me somewhere and I've got to sit for 15 or 20 minutes, 2 or 3 stoplights, to get through the one stoplight, sit 2 or 3 times, I'm not coming back. And if them people quit coming back, we're essentially trying to choke our golden goose. And we need to stop that. We need to pet our goose, not choke her. So let's quit the traffic studies and let's open this back up to 60 feet. We up there when we put in the extension from 4th to 76th, over there on the north side, we put in another 30 or 40 foot of sod, which is absolutely ridiculous. I have yet to see somebody picnicking from the sidewalk to the street. I mean, we spent a lot of money for eyesight, I guess, because I've seen nobody use it other than walk across it. So if that's the case, instead of having this 22 foot of asphalt where we got to worry about kids darting out behind cars coming out, let's open that back up so everybody can see. And then when you want the bicycles to come, there's room for everybody. But at 22 foot, it gets pretty tight. And then, and a lot of times, we're pretty lucky up from 4th up, because they usually only park on one side, unless an event's going on, and then they park both sides, and then it's real tight. But down here in town, they park on both sides, and it's tight. It's real tight. And it's so tight it's dangerous. So we've spent a lot of money on traffic studies, and I think it's time for us to say, you know what? For one or two or just a few, we've bent over backwards, and we're hurting ourselves. Let's open this back up like it's supposed to be. Thanks.
Thank you.
We've got 4 minutes, and then we've got to go to. Oh, by the way, everyone's invited to go to the community meeting at Superior Elementary School after we're done.
Hi, Daryl McCool. I live on Coal Creek Drive, and I do agree with George on one point that I think it's time to stop doing traffic studies. It's pretty clear we have policies in place. The comprehensive plan says to protect original town. The transportation plan says to protect original town. I actually found this old photograph from 2003 that says local traffic only. It's at the corner of 4th and Coal Creek Drive. So, yeah, it's time to maybe stop spending money on this and protect the people in original town and not have cut-through traffic going through to the marketplace. There are other ways to get to the marketplace. They were designed that way, they're meant to be that way, and the people in original town are really tired of having close to 2,000 cars a day going by their homes every single day. I was actually shocked that there's 600 bikes going by. I don't know how you collect the bike data, but that was pretty amazing. So yeah, I would really like to see some action because, as Mark, you pointed out, quality of life is really important. And since I've lived here, our quality of life has just diminished considerably with the amount of traffic that goes through there. So thank you very much. And if anyone would like a copy of the local traffic only beyond this point sign, I'm happy to send it to you.
Do we know why that came down?
When they did the sidewalks.
Okay.
Rick Kuffner, 411 West Charles. Yeah, I agree on the studies. You know, it is what it is, guys. Developments happen to the west. There's 200 more cars. We're going to have a development down here on the south end of town of about 200 more units. That's going to be about 400, 500, 600 more cars coming up through here because the last town board meeting, they talked about they had a nice plan where there's going to push all the traffic out on McCaslin to this beautiful roundabout. And no, somebody stands up and says, no, we want to connect to original town to that development. So, you know, you think Coal Creek and 4th is bad now, you wait until that traffic is pushed up here and goes up there. Because there's only one way to get across to the mall now, and that's go up, catch 4th, across over. So that corner is going to become a high volume corner. So I think that we need to go back one more and think about keeping that traffic down there, back out on McCaslin, and then put back the signs that we had no cut-through traffic. You know, those were there and they seemed to work. Because if you come in and out of this town as much as I do, you start following people, they'll come down the hill, turn left, go up to 4th, go down 4th and over because they don't want to go through the lights over here. So if we could stop 50% of that, the problem would solve itself. Big time. And that, you know, and that's where I'm coming from. And if you guys want to just stand out there on a day and just watch what happens, the cars come down the hill and go right over. And the same thing, they'll come out of the mall, come over, turn left, turn down Coal Creek Drive to go out here because they don't want to go through the lights.
Right.
So it's more cut-through traffic than it is community traffic.
Hi, I'm Jordan Kuffner. I just want to point out that Coal Creek is a public road, and by paying taxes, you can drive on a public road, and nobody should be able to say you can or cannot drive on that public road, because we do pay for it with our tax money. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we can adjourn. The last item, the person who requested it couldn't make it tonight, so we could also discuss a request.
What's the date of the next meeting? Yeah, do we have the date or? 3 months. Okay. Good.
So I think there's a number of things that we should bring to the board's attention in light of tonight's discussion.
Mhm.
I think the Castle Peak question, the revisit of the transportation plan, and then I agree that we've got ample data, and now we need to talk about how to address Coal Creek, and we should make that a priority as a board.
Good.
Okay. Thank you. See you at Superior Elementary in 15 minutes.
I already did, so you should have it right now.
Wasn't that so funny when that happened? He's like, we monitor this because we can't park. Well, you know the other thing we were just saying on Park Road, the reason that people go
had three situations.
Coming down the hill on Gaslin, and there's so much straight traffic that I can't get in the left turn lane. It's blocked. So I just cut through. I'm like, well, I'm not going to wait for it. Left turn arrow, which I can't make, and then wait for the straight.
Now they have the left is after the straight. So people go straight, and then you can go.
But that median is, that left turn lane is so short. And if that median were smaller, like if we allow that left turn, but that's a construction project.
We had one started down here.
So I had to reach out to everybody else today.
The speed thing used to be on Cascade, right? And if you were heading south, right before, if you're on Cascade, and the people in there, oh my gosh.
Right.
So there was one at one time, and
So
there
there
was
is
also
someone
that
who's
lived down there.
on Torrey's Peak, right by the Snowman Circle, that has
Yeah,
like
to
6 or
see,
7
and my
cars.
girl was right outside my girlfriend's house.
Yes, exactly.
They don't want to slow down when the cars coming in.
Yeah.
Now it's, we don't need those things.
I mean, that's the Oh, that's Kevin. Maybe go down. It's not that. Okay, I knew he was in that.
Kevin's in the corner of Snowmass.
Okay, 28.
South 32. Brian's house right next to it.
Got it, okay.
And, so I mean, there's a problem with that, right?
You know, my suggestion always was.
Well, and that's where our hope is if you just say, if you literally just say to come in your car every day, my hope is that more people would get rid of their extra
The problem is that, so much of this stuff is, because I've been here, years now, and I'm with you, so it's a demographic issue.
Absolutely, that's
very smart.
right. You didn't see Mark.
At the same time, what we can do is,
I mean, it's bizarre